side of that.
When you say something with the weapon was about to happen, what do you mean?
Well, it wasn't clear to me whether the weapon would be grabbed or fired or what exactly was going to happen, but it was clear to me that it was a situation where it was likely that something dangerous was going to happen, be it Mr. Rosenbaum grabbing it, Mr. Rittenhouse shooting it. I didn't know, but I knew that my eyes at that moment were, like in this exact moment, were fixated on the barrel of the weapon because I didn't want to end up on the receiving end of that.
You said your eyes were focused on the barrel of the weapon.
Yes.
Where was the barrel of the weapon pointed?
At this moment, when he stopped, it was aimed about 45 degrees at the ground.
Did the aim of the barrel of the weapon change?
It did. And when Mr. Rosenbaum lunged, Mr. Rittenhouse kind of dodged around. And then that's when it was leveled at Mr. Rosenbaum and fired.
What was the position of Mr. Rosenbaum's body when the defendant fired at him?
Well, there were 4 shots, but it was like in one continuous motion. It was like a lunge towards the front portion, a dodge around, and when he missed, his momentum continued forward.
I'm going to stop you for 1 second.
Yeah.
When he missed, who's he?
Mr. Rosenbaum, I'm sorry.
Please
Yes.
continue.
When Mr. Rosenbaum did not make contact with Mr. Rittenhouse, or it wasn't clear to me whether or not they made contact, but what was clear to me was that the trajectory of the rifle wasn't really altered by Mr. Rosenbaum's lunge. So if they did make contact and it was just a glance, it wasn't enough to alter the trajectory of the rifle. But and again, this is just because that was the only thing that I was looking at that point. And it's not clear to me whether he basically fell forward, but that was as...
I'm going to stop you for a second because you said he again. Can you
Oh, I'm sorry. Mr. Rosenbaum.
Okay. He fell forward.
Yes, like it was as if, if you were to lunge at somebody, if anybody were to lunge, they'd probably stop themselves, from falling face down on the ground, but the shots were fired in the exact instance that his momentum was going forward, and that continued until Mr. Rosenbaum landed on the ground.
When Mr. Rosenbaum landed on the ground after being shot by the defendant, what was Mr. Rosenbaum's body position?
He was lying face down.
Is it fair to say, if I'm understanding your testimony correctly, that when the defendant shot Mr. Rosenbaum was already falling forward?
His momentum, I wouldn't say falling, I would say his momentum was definitely going forward. It's not clear, to me whether he would have, fallen if, the shots hadn't been fired, but certainly his momentum was in the forward direction, and also his hands were out in front of his feet, such that, his center of gravity was beyond where his feet were.